Active FM. Radio has never been better.
In the greatness of Johannesburg, round about the street in Springfield. If you don't know what that is, sure heads, go to YouTube and come and see, not to be missed, the latest news headlines today in your face. This voice.
If it has the right filter on, it should sound like an old newspaper broadcast.
That was brilliant.
Yes, thank you.
Standing ovation
you.
all around. Good job, Ryan. Good job. Yes. I heard it. I saw it.
The crowd goes wild.
In my face, I saw it. Yeah. No.
Now I want to see you do that.
No, I can't.
Because we were just saying that back in the
1940s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
A lot of the announcements were like that.
All the announcements. Not one of them were a female.
And can you hear a female doing that? Not that they can't. I'm sure they can. It's just I don't remember ever hearing an announcement.
Yeah, but I don't think it would be the same either.
If you get a woman with a strong voice, of course. Imagine Nebula doing it.
Okay, maybe. That is a good point. That is a very good point. You're probably wondering what on earth has happened. Well, this is the movie show, and we decided to watch, in inverted commas, the greatest film of all time. We did, finally. Yeah.
Quite a very interesting film.
Yes, it is called
very different.
Citizen Kane. I'm sure you've heard about it. We did a couple of shows back. We looked at like IMDb, Variety, Rolling Stones, top 10 films of all time, and I'm sure Citizen Kane came up more than once. And it was made in 1941, so it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure every single person that was involved in this film is now dead, as we are now in 2023.
Yeah.
In fact, we're almost 100 years. We're close to 100 years. The 100-year anniversary of Citizen Kane, which is intense.
1940.
Yeah.
About 20 years out.
Yeah.
Right? 20 years.
Less than 20.
You know, in a long time lap.
2021 would have been 20 years away from...
Yes.
So we are under 20 years away from the 100th-year anniversary of Citizen Kane.
Yeah, about 18 years.
Which is crazy.
So this is not your ordinary film. Even back in its day, it was not an ordinary film made by, a great story and da. This is one of those films that they like every rule was probably broken.
In fact, and I'm sure we'd said this was it 12 Angry Men? At the time that this film came out, it was actually considered a box office flop. Which I think happened with 12. There was another film as well that at the time that it was released, it didn't do well.
Didn't do as well.
But as time has progressed, it's become one of the, literally if you search the internet about Citizen Kane, you'll just see questions like, is Citizen Kane worth the watch? What makes Citizen Kane the greatest film of all time? Those are the questions that go around Citizen Kane. And I mean, the fact that we are sitting close to 100 years after the release of this film and we watched it does say something for the film,
Yeah. I mean, Guardians was great. That's where we are. Understand, people.
Yes. One thing that shocked me, okay, in my opinion, right? Older movies were always round 1 hour, 20 minutes, 1 hour, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So I was expecting a 1 hour, 20 minute film. This movie was 1 hour and 59 minutes. It was a 2 hour film. And okay, maybe I need to do more research into it. But for 1941, I don't think that 2 hour films were normal. Now, yes, we've hit the stage where 3 hour films. I mean, now it's very easy for a film to, we've had a couple of 3 hour films.
Yeah.
That's become more of a norm now.
It's starting, 2 to 2.5.
Yeah.
Maybe 2.5 is average.
2.5 average, definitely.
It's a great film. Anything below that is too short.
Right.
And you're selling yourself short.
So when I saw that this one was 2 hours, I was like, what? It is a drama mystery. That is the genre of the film. And the director is Orson Welles, and he also played the main character, which I did not know while I was watching it. So
don't you think he looks very similar to, in his younger days, like Jack Nicholson?
Yes.
He has a very similar kind of... I was almost like Jack... No, 1940, no.
Yeah, it's way too early. Because he was already 25, 26 when this film, when he made this film. It was his first film. Before this, he had done theatre. And you can see how his work in theatre actually really directed.
Set up.
Yeah, the way that this film was done. Because when this film came out, it really did break every single like way a story was told, the way even the camera, the shots that was gotten. I mean, even the fact that some of the shots had the roof in them was very unusual. Now you're like, what? Why is that unusual? Because back in those days, and I'm sure they still do it nowadays, but all of the lighting and sound equipment was put in the roof. So all of the sets wouldn't have a ceiling because the equipment was all there. So they would always avoid showing the ceiling in the shot because obviously they didn't want all of that equipment to show. Whereas with this, I mean, they wanted the ceiling in. Like there was so many shots where they showed the ceiling, which was already very unusual. Yeah. I honestly, when I got to the end of this film, thought, because I'd heard about how like innovative and amazing it was. And when I got to the end of it, I was like, but then I realized what happened. So the films that we have today, a lot of them are the way they are because of Citizen Kane. So the way we know movies today was affected by Citizen Kane. And so that's why for us, it's not like, like for us, it's pretty like normal.
It's a creative.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like reinformed.
Yes, but back when it first came out, it was not the way films were done. It was not the way the story was told.
That would have been your Fight Club kind of film where you're just like, what? And then from there onwards, everyone's like, kind of brings out a film like that. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once wasn't 100% all that. I think they broke the rules more visual, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I definitely think they broke the rules in everything.
Not much like visually, this film, I could see how the shots were set up and what they were going for and that sort of thing. But in storytelling, like they take the linear, it's like they took the film, they pulled it out like this, and then they went.
Yep.
And then it's.
But it's not even that. It's not even that. Okay, I'll get into that now. But that's normal for us.
Yeah.
Take every Christopher Nolan film. Like that's normal. Like we're used to the non-linear storyline. Do you understand what I'm saying? We have directors whose like whole filmography is a non-linear storyline with.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So like for us, that's not. But back then, that is not how they weren't used to that. Like
that was like the first film.
Yeah, you tell the story from start to end. But what's crazy about this film as well is, when they start the film, so they show you so just to give you a rundown, the start of the movie, you are watching Kane, the character Kane, die.
Yeah.
And you, as the audience, you witness his last words, which then the whole storyline kind of goes around those, like, why were those his last words? Because, like in a man's like last moment in his dying breath, like you choose very specific words to say. You're not just going to say like, tomato sauce, unless tomato sauce has a very, special meaning to you. So the fact that he said the words rosebud had a very, they were all like, why? And then, But then after that, they show a newsreel, which would have then played after he died, which basically tells you as the audience who he is, what he did with his life, which now you, as the audience, have actually witnessed everything that you're about to see in the movie. So they don't tell you, they don't give you any more information other than dive into everything that they've already shown you. So all plot lines are actually revealed to the audience within the first 10 minutes of the film.
Exactly.
Which is very odd as well. Like normally, it's keeping the plot or certain elements of the plot.
Keeping the audience in.
Now, after that, you then have a bunch of journalists who now want to investigate why his last words were rosebud, because they want to write an article about him. And then they dive into his first marriage. They dive into his second marriage. They dive into his best friend. They dive into the guy that worked very closely with him. So they literally dive into each of those stories. But once again, you as the audience already know all of those facts. You know that his first marriage fell apart. So when you're watching his first marriage fall apart, you're not like, oh, because you already know his first marriage fell apart.
And one of the first montages were
yes.
also in the film.
Yeah. So like that, I think what was incredible about this movie was not the storyline. The storyline was actually very, very basic. Even eventually at the end, I'm not going to spoil what Rosebud was. I'll leave that to you to go and find out. But like even that in itself wasn't extraordinary. Like you got to the end of the movie and you're like, oh, is that what that was? Okay. Like it wasn't like, oh my gosh, did you see that? Oh, I never expected that. Like I never saw it. Like, it really wasn't like the storyline is very ordinary.
Yeah.
But the way that visually the story was told was extremely radical. And that I think is what makes this film such an incredible film was just that. And so many other films have the reason we have the movies we have today is because of, and the way we have them is because of Citizen Kane.
I think it's because he showed, like other directors and filmmakers, that there's more than one way to tell a story.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
And then other people sort of had their creative spark and they were like, no, we're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
like,
type
oh,
of thing.
wow.
In
Yeah.
fact, the DOP of Citizen Kane basically wanted, he actually called, what is his name?
Orson Welles.
He called Orson and said, I want to be in one of your productions. And he said specifically because of the fact that, number one, this was his first film. He didn't know any of the rules of filmmaking. And so he said, because you don't know how to do it, you don't know how not to do it.
Yeah.
So in other words, he's creative. So, and a lot of the time on set, like he would be setting up, he would set up his own lighting. So he doesn't quite know the rules or anything like that. And a lot of the angles and that sort of stuff, you can see it. But yet he's setting it up and everyone's like, no, wait.
What are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? And you'll be like, no, just leave him. Let's see what he's going to do creatively. And that would basically happen. In fact, he obviously within editing and that, he's seen his film, but he's never watched any of his film.
Yeah.
Like at the premiere or anything like that.
This is Wells, right?
Yes,
The director.
yeah.
I also heard that apparently I think he watched the full version once, but that was only when editing was done.
Yeah.
And obviously as the director, I think you kind of have to watch your movie at least once. But then he said even that was there's a myth that even during the premiere he actually walked out.
Yeah, he walked out before.
He didn't watch the which is crazy.
He said that he would like to think that it was great.
He hopes for it. But one of the things I really loved was how instead of just telling a story with like acting and like the use of a linear storyline and all of that, what really told the story was the visuals, that they really pushed visual storytelling within this film, which for me is one of the most beautiful ways to tell a story, is when you're focusing on it's also one of the most artistic ways to tell a story.
Yeah.
There's you can make a movie like this, but there can be like no art to it. Like, let's be honest, we've seen many films like that, but then there's films where
And they're usually boring.
they are normally boring.
They're usually very, very boring. Predictable.
Yes, but what I loved about this one was one of the big things that they talk about with this film is that, so in those days, which we know today, obviously the way you compose your shot was you focus on something and there's stuff out of focus in the shots.
Yeah.
So like if you want people to notice this cup, you focus on the cup and then everything around it is either slightly blurred or very blurred. It just depends on like the type of lens you use. But one of the things this movie did, which was not usual, was everything in the frame was in focus at all times. They didn't do the pull focus thing.
Yeah.
Like literally, if you had to freeze it, like everything was in focus, which was obviously it wasn't done in those days. But one of the reasons, there were two reasons. One of the reasons Wells did that was because he, like I said, came from theater. And in theater, you don't have a camera. You have a stage. Yeah. That's it. You have the audience, which is looking at the stage, and your placement of actors and props within the stage or on the stage determine how you tell and convey the story to the audience. So that's why in theater you have your different positions, and then you'll move your actors and that around so that you're drawing the audience's attention here when instead of being there, you're drawing it here, and that's the way you're telling the story. Which, if you watch this, is exactly what he does. So So everything's in focus. However, your attention is being drawn to a specific person in the frame at a specific time, and then the camera will move. But everything still remains in focus. It just either gets smaller, so at one point you have Citizen Kane, or Kane should I say, his parents are busy not selling him, they're busy giving him away to Mr. Thatcher, who is going to educate him. And at the same time, you can see the young Kane in the shot. So it's one shot. They didn't cut away. They don't cut away. It's one shot. You can see the boy playing in the background outside. You can see the parents discussing it, and you can see Thatcher. And even though you can see all three of them in the shot, you're still drawn to specific people at specific times because of how it works. So that was really cool. And then the second thing was, if you think about it, each shot is like a painting. In a painting, you don't have out of focus things. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if you look at a painting, everything is in focus, and your eye is drawn to different parts of the painting, depending on how the painter drew it or painted it, and what they wanted you to focus on. And that's what they also relay this film to. It's like a painting where it's conveying a story. It's giving you emotion. It's as the audience, it's drawing you somewhere. But even though everything is in frame, you're still getting something out of like each shot, which I thought was really, really cool, the way they often did that. And then the other thing that they did, which wasn't usual, was usually back then when they filmed, they had the whole hidden camera. That's how they did it. You know how like the camera's not actually in the room, and you as the audience are almost like watching this all from like a hidden camera perspective. So like the camera almost is not there.
Yeah.
Whereas with this film, he introduced these floating camera shots, which immediately make you aware as the audience that there is a camera there, because obviously now the camera's moving and panning, and we're used to a moving camera, like we're used to one-shotter sequences, but those sequences actually make you aware of the camera as the audience. You just don't realize it's moving around. Whereas previously, the way they filmed it was so that the audience wouldn't be made aware of the camera.
As if it's from a bystander's point of view.
Yes, it's like you're watching
and it's
this.
usually still.
Yeah, generally still.
Because you're
and
standing
even the
and you're
moving,
watching.
yeah, even the moving, it's not like these, like it's not impossible movements. So this one, the camera would literally float from the window all the way back through a table and onto the opposite side of the table, which you as a camera can't do that because you can't move through objects. But how they did that was they would have a table that was apart, and then as the cameraman would come back, the tables would obviously come together, making it look like he just went through the table, but it was actually just like it was actually the beginning stages of trick shots and like CG and stuff like that. Even though you don't think it's not like this fire breathing dragon that's come across the shot and you're like, wow, it's just a table that the cameraman just went through. But that's the reason we have film as it is today, is because of how this film particularly was filmed. The fact that they tried all of these, it's actually it's an amazing film to watch. I think especially a second and third time, because then you start looking for all of the different like filming techniques that they did, if you understand. So I think this is a good film for filmmakers. It's a very good film because it gets you thinking out of the box. Like you said, it doesn't put rules on you, or it makes you aware of filmmaking rules so that you can then break them. You know how they say,
well, that's usually
rules,
what they say.
Know the rules so that you can break them, but you're breaking them. Like, I
suppose it helps you to understand how to break them.
And if and when to break them. Look, I don't know if this film would be, I think maybe an average person might enjoy this film. They might not, though, because it's a very old film. And I don't know how many people like watching like really old movies. I think there are people that do, but I also think there's a large majority of people that don't like watching old black and white movies.
I suppose everyone's got their...
So I think if you're a filmmaker, this is a very good film to watch. Not necessarily because of the storyline, because like I said, I was honestly disappointed by the end of the movie. I was like, this is the greatest movie of all time. Like the storyline in 12 Angry Men caught, like that movie grabbed me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when you want to find out, that's what 12 Angry Men did. But 12 Angry Men from like a visual perspective was very simple. The storyline and the way the story was told and acted out, that's where it was interesting. Citizen Kane's more of like a visual, like it's visually impacting as opposed to storyline impacting. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. But I'm glad I watched it. Yeah. It was interesting. Like I said, when I got to the end, I was like, really? That's what Rosebud was? Seriously? Okay.
It was something different
It's
and new.
pointless.
It's nice to watch something different.
Yeah. And also the use of matte paintings. They used matte
They
paintings.
used quite a bit of matte
yeah,
painting,
which was also really cool. I thought
like
that
a lot
was
of the backgrounds and I think there was like even noise and snow.
Yeah. And also like some of the techniques, like watching it now, like it reminds me of like a Wes Anderson film where
there were some pans.
Yes,
and
like
zooms and
especially
stuff
the
that
panning and the
reminded me.
zooming. Yeah, like it reminded, and I like that style.
It's a
like
very messy like zoom. It's like
yeah.
It's almost like okay.
But it's also one where you can't do it in real life, so you have to use practical or trick shots
Well,
in
that's
order
what
to get
makes
it
it-
done.
yeah.
And I think that's also honestly, while watching this film, though, thoughts I would love to have watched this in color. I think like just I don't think they could back then. I think that's why they didn't. But I think it would have made it a whole lot more immersive, and especially because it's a visual. The way they told the story was visually. I think that adding color to it would have just taken it to like the next level.
I agree.
Yeah.
Especially what is it, Xanadu?
Yes.
That whole nice
Yeah.
island place hill thing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But for someone's first film, it was very good.
This is brilliant.
It was very, very good.
Do you think people would have been they wanted to see it because they know the stage director? So they're like, oh, you know, so and so just made a movie. Wow. Oh, isn't that, you know, whatever the Cats?
Nah.
Or whatever his stage play was big at that time. Yeah, it is. Oh, we got to go see it. And they go watch and they're like, oh, cool.
I don't know. Look, what I heard, obviously, this is
There's
just
a lot
going-
that he was able to do in the film that he wouldn't have been able to do on stage.
Yeah, yes.
Like especially the quick transitions from different sort of what do you call it, locations, the
newspaper,
montage.
yeah.
Although I'm sure you would have found some sort of like lighting effect for the montage
That he
and
could
that
have
sort
done,
of thing,
yeah.
But still,
But I think because even I was quite interested in the credits, before the credits roll, they actually say a lot of the actors that were in this film are new to the film industry. So for a lot of them, it was their first time acting. Like they actually put that in there. I was like, oh, wow. Because I mean, we don't have that nowadays. Like, so that was quite interesting. So I think that when the film came out, a lot of the actors weren't known, or it was like their first or second time acting.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I did research, they said at first this film, like in the 40s, this film was not considered good. It was only like the 50s and the 60s when
wow.
people revisited it that they started thinking, oh wow, this film's actually... So I think it's one of those where like you make something and at the time no one appreciates it, but like it's like aged wine, you know, like at first there's nothing to it, right? But as time goes on, it ages and matures, and
like 90
people
years
are
later.
like swishling it. That's not a word, but anyway, in their mouth, and then they're like, "This
Swirling.
tastes so swirling is the right
this
word."
is aged so well.
Yeah, like the maturity of this is just
1940. I can still taste the sum of that year. I remember.
yeah. It was a clever way. It was a good. How do I word this? You know how there's depth that you can either tell a story or you can go like a long story. Like you can tell a story like this, or you can go deep and you can do like character. Like I feel like this. They went deep.
Yeah.
Like they gave you an overall, and then they were like, okay, now let's go and deep dive into
Well, in
each.
theatre, you got to do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Movies is more like about visual
Yeah.
because you have it in your hands. Where theatre, you've got to try and take a limited amount of stuff and entertain people with it.
Yeah.
You know, your story must be.
And I must be honest, I was interested. It wasn't like my attention wasn't caught. Like there's definitely like different acts. You can pick up like the different acts within, like, because they go to like each because of the investigation, they're going to different people that were in Kane's life and getting their perspective of who he was. So you are getting, and then instead of the person just telling it, they do flashbacks. So that this film is actually flashbacks. That's what it is. Whereas 12 Angry Men, they didn't do flashbacks. Instead, you were listening to the actor portray what they... So these two films are very different from one another. But I can see why both of them have like stood the test of time because, yeah, they both... I think maybe I was expecting 12 Angry Men. And then this is completely different. It's nothing like 12 Angry Men. So, yeah... But it was, I definitely, I think I'd watch it again. Yeah. I think I'd watch it again.
I don't know if I'd watch it again.
I think I'd watch it again.
It was a good experience. It was a good experience.
I think I'd watch it again, but this time I'd watch it with a critical, technical eye. Like to almost watch for like ideas.
There's probably stuff that would...
Because it's like if they could get this right back in 1941 when they didn't have all that we have today.
Yeah.
Like that inspires you almost...
And knowing what he knows.
Yeah. Not to rely on like CG or for like going, okay guys, they did this practically. How do we do this practically? Like their camera literally floated through a sign into a window. Like how do... And like, yeah, like how do we do this? Yeah.
Today there would be green men holding 2 stars and
moving on. So that was
good idea. Lots of
Citizen
lessons.
Kane.
I actually saw a film lesson, and they made it on this film.
That's you see. I think I'd watch this with. I'd want to watch it again with a critical eye and even with like like someone dissecting it.
Yeah, they're actually in it. They say what made the movie such a brilliant. Lessons to learn as a filmmaker.
Yeah. But then again, also to say, is it the greatest film of all time? I personally am not one of those people that like that statement.
Guardians was better.
No, you can't say that. That's what I'm saying. You cannot. Film is. It's not. For me, it's just like.
I'm talking about from the experience of the film.
You know what? You know why I don't think you can say that a specific film is the greatest film of all time, because each film and each filmmaker is a piece of art and is an artist, right? And then you yourself have your own taste, right? Which means that certain people are going to like certain films and other people are going to like other films, but that's all just a matter of taste, right? But we all know that, like, let's look at paintings. For example, we know like there's many different painters and they all had their masterpiece. And we all know like Picasso, we know like Van Gogh, we know all of these different painters, right?
Yeah.
And we're all like, they were incredible artists. But now to go, which painting was the greatest painting of all time? You can't do that because all of them were different. They were at different times. Do you understand? But we can go, that was a masterpiece. And I think, so when doing research into that, someone actually mentioned that the word masterpiece, we've come today to know masterpiece as like a good piece of art. But actually, originally what the word masterpiece meant was in order for an artist to become a master of the craft, they would present a painting to like the guild, which was like the group of greatest artists in whatever, so for whether it was a painter, a musician or whatever, they would present this piece of work, which obviously was like the greatest thing that they had to offer, and that piece of work would depend whether they were able to enter the masters of that art or not. That's why it's called a masterpiece, because if that was good enough, they could then enter and they would claim the title master painter or master composer or master whatever. So like for me to say the greatest film of all time, I don't agree with. I agree with there are certain film masterpieces which have set filmmakers aside from the rest of, like, it has made them a master filmmaker. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Citizen Kane did that for Wells. Now to go, his films are better than Christopher Nolan's, or Christopher Nolan's films are better than. Do you understand? Like you can't do that. Because they're all different. It's different taste. It's different arts. It's different expressions. Yeah. So that's just my take on the whole greatest film of all time.
Great.
It's like, no, guys.
Agreed.
No. You can have a museum of the greatest films of all time. And then, like, each one we look at them, we're like, this one. Yeah.
It's Netflix.
No, it's not Netflix.
Netflix.
It's not Netflix.
Netflix is.
It's not
There's
Netflix.
a
There
whole
are
lot of
terrible films on Netflix, Ryan.
Yeah, I suppose. It's the movie show.
There we go.
Even though there are some bad films in there.
Yeah. So Citizen Kane definitely falls in that category of
Yeah.
masterpieces, but not necessarily the greatest film of all time. Because there cannot be one singular greatest film. Unless a film comes along one day and changes my mind, then I'd be really impressed.
I think it's just, what is your favorite film?
Yeah. What is your... Yeah, definitely.
My favorite film so far is Guardians, but
Volume 3.
in a month's time, it
Yeah,
could be
that's what I was
different.
about to say. It's because it just came out, Ryan. And Ryan hasn't yet seen Oppenheimer. Ryan needs to go watch
I'm looking
Oppenheimer.
forward to that. I am looking forward to that. That's going to be a great film. Yes, I
There you
agree.
But this has been the movie show.
On your favorite ORS, PS.
Till next week.
Cheerio.